20 years ago, a little girl shared her lunch with a hungry boy behind a broken fence. She never expected to see him again. After 20 years, he finally kept the promise. But Naomi couldn't believe what she was hearing, because 20 years earlier, she had shared her only lunch with a starving boy, and he made her a promise that sounded impossible. One day, when I'm rich, I'll marry you. But promises made by children rarely survive 20 years. And yet, fate brought them together again. But Naomi still didn't know one thing. Why had he spent years searching for her? Some promises are made with confidence. Some are made with desperation. But the most dangerous promises of all are the ones made by children who don't yet understand how long life really is. This one was made on a dusty afternoon behind a broken school fence by an 8-year-old boy who had nothing, to an 8-year-old girl who didn't even realize she was giving away more than food. Naomi Carter learned early how to stay quiet. At 8 years old, she already knew the rules of being a black girl in a poor neighborhood. Don't ask too many questions. Don't complain too loudly. And never expect life to be fair just because you're kind. Her school sat near the edge of the city, where concrete met weeds and hope felt temporary. The paint on the classroom walls was peeling. The desks were old, and the playground fence leaned like it was tired of standing. That fence would matter one day, but Naomi didn't know that yet. All she knew was that her mother packed her lunch every morning with careful love, not because there was plenty, but because her mother believed a child should never go to school hungry if it could be helped. That particular day, Naomi's lunch was small. Rice, a little stew, 1 apple. Enough for one child. Exactly one. The bell rang for lunch, and children rushed out like birds escaping a cage. Naomi walked more slowly, holding her lunchbox close, scanning the ground the way she always did, out of habit, out of caution. That was when she saw him. He stood on the other side of the fence, barefoot, too thin, too still. At first, Naomi thought he was older, maybe a teenager, but when she looked closely, she realized he was just a boy, about her age, maybe even younger. His clothes were dirty, hanging loosely on his small frame. His hair looked like it hadn't been cut in a long time. His eyes followed the lunchboxes, not the children, the food. Most students didn't notice him. Those who did looked away quickly, as if hunger was contagious. A few boys laughed and pointed, but the teachers said nothing. The fence did its job. It separated. Naomi stopped walking. Something inside her tightened. The boy noticed her staring and immediately looked down. Shame moved faster than hunger on his face. Naomi hesitated. She had never spoken to a stranger like that before, especially not a boy, especially not one who looked like life had already failed him. But her feet moved anyway. She walked closer to the fence. "Hi," she said quietly. The boy flinched, then looked up slowly. He didn't smile. He didn't speak. His stomach growled loud enough for both of them to hear. Naomi swallowed. "Are you hungry?" she asked. The boy nodded once. That was all. No begging, no lies, just truth. Naomi opened her lunchbox. Her hands trembled, not from fear, but from knowing what this choice would cost her. She was hungry too, and she wouldn't get another meal until night. Still, she pushed the lunchbox through the broken space in the fence. "All of it?" the boy asked, shocked. Yes, she replied. He took it carefully, like it might disappear if he moved too fast. He sat on the ground and ate like someone racing against time, chewing fast but trying to be polite. My name is Ethan, he said between bites. Ethan Walker. I'm Naomi, she replied. He paused when she said her name. Naomi, he repeated, like he wanted to remember it forever. They met every day after that, not because they planned to, but because hunger and kindness kept pulling them back to the same place. Naomi shared her lunch whenever she could. Some days she had food. Some days she didn't. On the days she didn't, she still sat by the fence and talked to Ethan so he wouldn't feel alone. He told her pieces of his story in fragments, never all at once. No father, a mother who got sick and disappeared, nights spent sleeping anywhere that felt safe enough. He didn't cry when he talked. That scared Naomi more than tears would have. One afternoon, after finishing the last of her food, Ethan wiped his hands and stared at the school building. Do you like it in there? He asked. Naomi shrugged. It's okay. I wish I could go, he said quietly. Naomi didn't know what to say to that, so she said nothing. Instead, she stood up, brushed the dust off her uniform, and smiled at him through the fence. You'll be fine one day, she said, like a child who still believed words could fix things. Ethan looked at her with sudden seriousness. When I become rich, he said, slowly, carefully, I will marry you. Naomi laughed, not because it was silly, but because it was impossible. You don't even know me, she teased. I know enough, he replied. You fed me. The bell rang. Naomi waved and ran back toward the building, not knowing that those words would follow both of them for the next 20 years. Ethan's life did not improve quickly. If anything, it grew harder. At 9, he learned how to disappear in plain sight, how to sleep lightly, how to keep his back against a wall. Hunger became a constant companion, less painful than hope, but more honest. Sometimes, when his stomach burned too badly, he thought of Naomi, of the way she said his name, of the way she handed over her food without hesitation, of the promise he made that day, not as a joke, but as a vow to himself. He repeated it silently during his worst nights. When I'm rich, I'll come back. At 16, Ethan entered the foster system briefly. At 18, he left with nothing but anger and ambition. At 20, he worked any job that paid, even the ones that broke his body. He learned fast, too fast. Failure taught him discipline. Hunger taught him focus. Being ignored taught him how to observe people closely, especially how power worked. By the time he was 25, Ethan was no longer invisible. By 28, he was wealthy. Naomi, meanwhile, learned a different kind of survival. She graduated high school with good grades and big dreams. College came and went in fragments, one semester here, one break there, until money forced her to choose reality over ambition. She worked. Retail, cleaning, restaurants. People often described her as nice. They didn't realize how much strength it took to stay that way. At 28, Naomi lived in Chicago. She had learned how to smile without expecting anything back. How to say, I'm fine, and mean, I'm tired. She didn't believe in promises anymore, but she still believed in being kind. On the night everything began to shift, Naomi was wearing a borrowed dress, not because she wanted to impress anyone, but because of the dinner she was working, a private corporate event, high-end guests, clean smiles, quiet service. As she carried trays through the crowd, her eyes fixed on the polished floors and the gleaming silverware, her mind wandered. Then she saw him, tall, confident, calm, But it wasn't just his presence, it was a spark of familiarity. He caught her glance for just a second, then looked away. Something inside him stirred. Something old. Something waiting. Off the chandeliers, glasses clinking, servers moving tirelessly. And yet, they existed in a private bubble of tension. A bridge spanning 20 years of separation, hunger, kindness, and a promise made in innocence. Neither spoke, but the weight of their shared past pressed into the air like an invisible hand. Naomi had no idea why her stomach fluttered nervously. He had no idea if she would ever remember the boy behind the fence, or worse, if she might resent him for stepping into her life after all these years. But chance, as it often does, had opened a door. The dinner finally wound down. Guests left in small clusters, laughter lingering in the hall, glasses clinking, conversations fading. Naomi moved carefully, carrying the last tray of food toward the kitchen. Her mind wandered, as always. Then she stepped outside to catch a breath. The cool night air brushed against her skin. The city lights glittered like scattered stars. And there he was, standing under a streetlight, just a few meters from the entrance, tall, confident, calm. But it wasn't just his posture. It was the way he held himself, like someone who had waited 20 years for this exact moment. Ethan's eyes met hers. Naomi. His voice was steady, weighted with the years, with hunger, with hope. Her heart skipped. Memories of the dusty playground and the shared lunchbox flooded back. The fence, the rice, the way he had promised her something impossible. I've waited a long time to find you, he said. I want to keep the promise I made behind that fence. Will you let me? Naomi froze. Her breath caught. The air around them felt charged. The city noises seemed to fade. Only the memory of a small boy and a lunchbox remained. And then he knelt. A ring sparkled under the streetlight. Simple, elegant, perfect. Yes, she whispered finally. Tears blurred her vision, tears of disbelief, of relief, of long-awaited justice for her heart. He rose slowly, holding her hands in his. The weight of 20 years of absence, struggle, and kindness hung between them, but it felt light now, as if life had finally returned what had been promised. They walked together under the glow of the streetlight. Every struggle, every act of courage, every small choice had led them here. Naomi realized then that life rewards patience, quiet courage, and the ripple effect of simple acts of care. Even the smallest kindness can echo through time, changing lives in ways you never see coming. Promises may be made in childhood. Dreams may stretch over decades. And sometimes the things we give without expectation come back in ways we cannot imagine. Kindness matters. Patience matters. The courage to keep believing, even when life seems unfair, matters. And as Naomi and Ethan walked hand in hand into the quiet city streets, they carried more than love. They carried every lesson learned in the spaces between hunger and hope. The night had grown quiet. The city lights shimmered softly on the wet pavement, and the world around them moved as it always did. Cars passing, distant laughter, footsteps echoing in the streets. But for Naomi and Ethan, something had changed forever. Sometimes the greatest turning points in life don't happen in grand halls or bright stages. Sometimes they happen in the quiet corners of ordinary streets, under simple streetlights, in moments no one else notices. Naomi once believed her life had closed its doors. She believed that kindness had left her behind. She believed that love had become something meant for other people, not for her. But life has a strange way of surprising us when we least expect it. Because the truth is, the people who walk past our struggles every day may not understand the weight we carry. But somewhere, somehow, there is always someone who sees. Someone who notices the quiet strength it takes just to keep going. Ethan saw that strength in Naomi long before she ever believed it herself. He saw it in the way she kept working even when life was unfair, in the way she treated others with kindness even when her own heart was tired. And sometimes, that quiet strength is exactly what changes someone else's life too. Many people think love begins with grand gestures, expensive gifts, or perfect moments. But real love often begins much smaller. It begins with listening, with noticing, with standing beside someone when the world has forgotten them. That simple meeting outside a small apartment building, that ordinary evening under a streetlight, became the moment two lives quietly turned toward a future neither of them had planned. And perhaps the real lesson of their story is this: life has a way of writing beautiful chapters for people who refuse to stop believing that tomorrow can still be different. Sometimes, the person who changes your life doesn't arrive with noise or attention. They simply arrive and choose to stay. And on that quiet street, beneath the gentle glow of a streetlight, Naomi realized something she had forgotten long ago: that hope can return, that kindness is never wasted, and that sometimes the most unexpected love stories begin on the most ordinary nights.